Welcome to another edition of Fantastic Comic Fan Presents. This is one of the two indie comic podcasts that I do. Today, I am doing something very different, and I am welcoming Ed Cato, who is also on the regular feed this week for the regular podcast, Fantastic Comic Fan. Now, Ed has also agreed to talk about a property that he and his partners have control of and are putting comics out. Tell the fans a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Ed Cato, and I've been involved with comics for a long time, passionate comic fan, and involved in the business side a bit. And one of the really fun things I do with two partners, Joe Ahern and Michael Polis, is run Captain Action Enterprises, where we make sure that my favorite childhood toy is out there, not here and now in 2025.
Tell me briefly when Captain Action started and why and when you guys bought the rights to Captain Action.
Sure. Captain Action started in the 60s. He was an action figure. In fact, the first superhero action figure, Ron, created by the guy who created G.I. Joe. And much like the way G.I. Joe could change into a Navy guy or an astronaut, Captain Action would change into Superman or Lone Ranger or the Phantom or Batman, that whole superhero thing. In fact, it was an amazing licensing deal that the creator put together with all different companies. And even as I spoke to him, he talked about driving around Manhattan in cabs and having tracks written there by the admins with carbon copies. But anyways, it was this old toy that we just loved. It had a great comics history too. We jumped on board and assumed ownership of Captain Action in 2009. Joe and I, we were part of this collectors club. So there's all these collectors. And actually, we were trying to get everyone to have a meetup in New York City. We said, let's have a happy hour. Come on. We don't have to bring our collections, but we should meet in person. And Joe and I were the only guys who showed up. And so we had a great friendship and we laughed a lot about it. Then as that opportunity for Captain Action became available, Joe, who was involved with one of the prior rejuvenation, said, hey, let's form a company and run Captain Action now. And I said, you're crazy. I'll never do that. But I ended up doing it. And we started not with a toy. Toys are hard. Comics are hard too, but with a comic series. So we relaunched Captain Action #0 at Moonstone. Beautiful Paul Gulacy cover. Fabian Nicieza wrote it, and it was their best-selling book at Little Moonstone back in the day. And we've been publishing comics and toys and collectibles ever since.
Dynamite put out a Captain Action comic. How long ago was that?
Yeah, so that was about 4 or 5 years ago. All the good folks at Dynamite wanted to tell the early story of Captain Action, so they called it Codename Action. And it was like the year zero story of Captain Action. It ended with the last page. I think he wears his costume and he gets his costume. And it was a great tale penned by Chris Robinson. And we had so much fun with that. We had some beautiful covers, Jay Lee covers, and Joe Jusko covers. And then more recently, we were published through IDW. They compiled the old 1960s comics. We'll talk about that another time, but just a marvelous compilation. And now we have 2 more comics coming out this year.
So where is Captain Action set as a character? Is he modern day? Is he 60s? Or how does his adventures do? Or does it change depending on who's doing what?
Yeah, it changes depending on who's doing what. Essentially, he's a modern character. We say super spy, which the more I've thought about it, doesn't make any sense what a super spy is, but he is one. And he's a guy who uses his skills to fight evil in all forms. Sometimes he uses his disguise skills. Sometimes he uses other skills. And he has a cast of characters. He has the prerequisite bad guys like Dr. Evil and a sidekick and a female version, Lady Action, who in some ways is more interesting than Captain Action. But yeah, we have quite the cast and quite the mythology we've accumulated.
Speaking of mythology, American mythology just recently did the one with Al Capone, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, Al Capone Vampire Hunter and Captain Action team up, like unexpected team up, and somehow it all just works. It's a great story written by Jeff Vaughn, gorgeous art by the Frime brothers. In fact, I bought a page and it should be arriving today or tomorrow. I can't wait to see that page. But yeah, it's a great series. And we introduce in that a new character called Professor Fangs, who's going to be a bad guy and who's going to figure very heavily into the toy line. So we're really excited for Professor Fangs.
Is there a possibility of another issue of Al Capone in the future?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
Always a possibility.
so you also have something coming out with Don Simpson, correct?
Yes. Don is a fantastic guy. If you admire creative entrepreneurs who stick with it and fight the good fight, Don Simpson's type of guy that you admire. I've been a longtime fan of his work. I met him because I helped run a convention, and he was complaining one time that he was at a convention and the cosplayers and R2D2 were so noisy and he couldn't talk to any of the fans. So I said, Don, come to my show and we'll treat you like a king. We'll make sure that you have a really good experience. And he bit. He's okay, we'll give it a go. And we've had him back 3 years now, and the fans love him, and we just love him. He's a great guy. He came up with this idea of incorporating Captain Action into his Megaton Man Multi-Mentions book, which is his longtime proprietary character, Megaton Man, interacting with all different characters, some by the creators, although the Captain Action story Don did. And it's a great effort to be a part of. We're really excited for that.
Would you consider Captain Action and all these various stories the same Captain Action or different multi-universe Captain Action?
I'm glad you asked that. And I think it's such a fascinating thing because part of it, you could say, well, there's a Batman and Bat Wheels for young children, and there's Batman movies for people who don't like comics, and there's a new Batman #1 coming out soon for people who like comics, and they're all slightly different. And really, if you go back, the Shadow, a precursor of Batman in many ways, was so different in the pulps than he was in radio. It's two separate characters almost, like very different. What he was doing, his whole setup, his supporting cast, his mission. And I think I feel okay with that. And I hesitate because as an old-time comic nerd, I want all the continuity to work out perfectly. When does this one take place? When does this adventure take place? And Captain Action, we've got a lot of different things going on. Yeah, we like to stay consistent and have Captain Action be Captain Action. I think if you squint, everything kind of fits, but some of them are a bit of outliers.
How do you decide who's going to publish what with Captain Action, and why haven't you guys, or have you done your own Captain Action comics?
Oh, the answer is, let me take it in reverse. We
No.
have. We published through Moonstone for about 6 or 7 years. And then we published through Dynamite. And that was really our effort with Dynamite. And those were great efforts. And we had a lot of fun. I think that we're at the point with Captain Action, we're really trying to work like on toys. We've got this animation pitch that we're hip deep or neck deep in, I'd say, and trying to coordinate it all at the same time gets to be very difficult. When we created our toy line that was in Toys R Us, like looking back, we shouldn't have been able to do it. I think our naivety helped us because we shouldn't have been able to launch in Toys R Us without a cartoon show back in those days, without some other thing to prop up the property. But we did, and it was great. So as we go forward, we're trying to be very mindful about everything. But at the same time, we love comics, and we love working with our friends like Don Simpson and Jeff Vaughn. And we're always up for a fun project.
In theory, let's say Acme Comics wants to do a Captain Action comic book story. What's your criteria for allowing somebody to help you put out Captain Action comics? I'm just curious.
A lot of people create IP as a sales promotion pitch deck for the big movie. Hey, here's my comic, but really I want to make a movie or I want to make a streamer. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not our approach. And that's not what we've tried to do. So we're always looking to make sure that anything that we do fits with the other different efforts that we have. And sometimes we're really successful and sometimes we struggle and stumble, but trying to work with publishers that we can align with what we're trying to do and how it fits into the big picture that's what we always end up having discussions about.
Last question. If a fan isn't reading Captain Action comics that are out there, why should they?
Oh, I think if there's a fan who wants something that's fun, also something that's self-contained, Captain Action has a long history, but these two projects, Megaton Man, Multi-Mentions, and Captain Action versus Al Capone Vampire Hunter, are quick bursts of fun adventure. And I think if that's your thing, I'd say give it a try. We'll be at San Diego, where we typically have a panel at San Diego. We'll make announcements for that as at the proper time. But we're excited and hope people give it a try.
Ed Cato with Captain Action, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it all, Ron.